Welcome back to Proxy, everybody. And today I have Aaron Mosier with us today, and he's going to talk about a couple things. First of all, he has something that he wants to share with you guys and the community. The Battle Against Breast Cancer. It's a series of events he's been putting together to bring awareness to the struggle and the fight. So, how you doing today, Aaron?
Good man. Looking forward to another weekend, some more 40K, and thanks for having me on to talk about this.
Awesome, man. Absolutely. Well, I heard about this because somebody in the channel Discord mentioned that you were at the Richmond Open and, showed me your army. I got really invested in in looking at how cool it was. And he said that you had this kind of series of events that you were running to raise awareness for this issue. And I thought, what better way to bring awareness to it than to have you on the channel, talk about 40K, and also talk about this a little bit. So, do you mind telling the community a little bit about what you got going on here and how they can support it and, kind of get themselves involved in it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and yeah, I was selling it pretty hard at that Richmond Open. Richmond was a fantastic event, by the way. Like props to the away games who ran it, and um, really solid event. So the battle against breast cancer. It probably sounds familiar. The name is clearly stolen from the battle to end Alzheimer's, but it was inspired by those guys. So I was talking with JC Watts and the guys who put on the battle to end Alzheimer's, which I played in, back in February, and I was absolutely just floored by the good that they did with a day of 40K. So they ended up raising like 38 grand towards Alzheimer's research. Um, I immediately turned to one of my buddies, and was like, "Wow, dude, could we do this for breast cancer?" My wife's a survivor, so this one really means a lot to me personally. And he looks back at me and he goes, "Yeah, man." He's like, "40K players love boobs. Hell, most of us have them." um, and so we kind of started rolling from there. We talked to War Games Live, who had been covering it that day, and he was pretty quickly on board to come down and do a GT with us. And it started out as just like one 64 player charity GT, which is going to happen. That's going 26 to 27 October at your hobby place in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Um, and we were looking at ways to make it successful, right? Like the Alzheimer's event had been going for 3 years now. It's kind of got a brand to it. They're doing very well, and we've definitely got to set our target a little lower. Like we're not going to probably not going to crush it the first year. Um, but we're trying to figure out, how do we get more people involved? How do we make this more fun? How do we make it more interesting for the players? We started looking at the art raffle, and the art raffle exploded. So I started reaching out to, pro painters on Instagram and all over the world. And, my strategy here was like, let me send out 100 messages. Maybe I'll get 5 back. And no, I got like all of them back. And very quickly we're at like 35 pro painters. I'm gonna try not to throw any names out today, just because life happens, and if one of them has to fall out, I don't want them to feel bad about it because we're advertising already. But some of them have already completed their work, sent it in. We've got some amazing stuff, but they started sending these from all over the world, and it's really incredible, amazing art. There's this one display piece of the emperor on the golden throne, like it's just wild.
That was
And so the
so cool.
immediate
Yeah.
that one's beautiful. I'm not going to be bidding on anything myself because it would look bad if I won. But there's also a Eldar spirit here that just looks amazing that I want. So if anybody wins it, I'll buy it off you. Um, yeah. So then
Yeah.
we were in our next conundrum there. It was like, holy crap, we have 35 pro painters and another 10 who were like, yeah, I want to do it. Let me confirm this summer. It's like, how do we how do we get enough reach on this to make their art worthwhile? Usually there's like 5 or 6 raffle pieces in a tournament. Um, it was like, all right, well, this clearly we need to take this online. Let's work, to get this on stream. Let's see if we can, let other people participate in the raffle. And then the immediate question after that was like, well, why don't we let other people participate in the tournament? Like, how could we? So I did the same thing I did with artists. I just started reaching out to organizers on BCP, kind of just like cold emailing and telling them, hey man, here's what we're doing. Like this is all supporting the American Cancer Society directly through their annual breast cancer fundraiser. Like we're not keeping any money, nobody's making any money. This is all going to a good cause. Would you like to be involved? And immediately it was wave after wave of hell yeah, we're in. to the point where we've got 24 different tournaments happening so far, and we're continuing to grow that. All those are just in the US. There's 2 GTs, the rest are RTTs, except for one. We've got one Apocalypse event, and then my old weirdo store from like the high desert out in California. They're gonna throw in a Star Wars event because they're sick of 40K.
Oh,
Um, which hurts
right
my
on.
heart a little bit to hear, but hey, good cause. So, and the first event actually just went. So the Gopher Games in Urbana, Illinois. Like these guys jumped in hard and were like, hey, yeah, we want to participate. We don't want to wait till October. Um, so they've already done an RTT. They've already donated. They're planning on running recurring events like monthly. I don't know if that'll lead to some burnout, but they're all about it. And it's a good way for them to advertise as a new store out there as well. So I'm just shocked by like the amount of community support who people that are just like, yeah, let's do this, let's help. And that was really cool to see from stores, especially because a lot of stores need the money. Like 40K is a tough
Right.
hobby to support. And so
Absolutely.
um but yeah, it's been awesome so far. So yeah, that's kind of my call to arms here. Like I know you're gonna put the link up. If you have an event near you, anyone watching, listening in, like check it out, go play in the event. And if you don't, give us a call, give us an email, whatever. Let's see if we can get one set up near you because like a little decentralized love here is going to go a long way for a really good cause. Um, and yeah, I mean
Absolutely.
it's already going to be upward of like 500 players involved in this thing. So
And that's really amazing. I mean, just the amount of support I think that's come out so far. The Warhammer 40K community, a lot of people might not, immediately think that this is the case, but it's a very supportive community of a lot of
yeah,
different things. Mental
yeah,
health, veterans, and now Alzheimer's and now breast cancer as well, because of you and because of your efforts. So again, I just want to thank you for doing that because that's really awesome. Absolutely
honestly,
amazing.
I think it's just going to be a feel good for everyone involved, and it's really cool to see that sort of positivity and outpouring of support for each other with nothing to gain from a community that kind of gets mischaracterized sometimes by like our online internet interactions.
Right.
I'm looking at you, Custodes Group, um, but
Right.
it's all right. It was Eldar last year, so but
Absolutely,
yeah,
man.
it's really cool to see a bunch of good people come together to do some good stuff. So
That's cool. And for all you guys out there watching, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the QR code. If you are interested, go ahead and check that out. I'll also have the links to the Facebook page in the description so you can check that out and support. And of course, you can always email me with additional questions and I can reach out to Aaron and, see what ways that you guys can help as well. So thank you so much. Now, having said that, you were recently at a tournament and you played in it and participated in it, the Richmond Open 2024. I did an interview with Sean, another member of the Discord, about that tournament and his experience and what he was going in with. Now, this is kind of a post experience video. You have now played in that tournament. How did you feel about it?
yeah, the tournament was great. So it's hosted by the Away Games, which are actually the same guys who are going to host the main GT for the breast cancer event. They come in with GW templates and terrain, real solid team of judges, and the event's very well run. They're running off of like the WTC FAQ, which has some weirdness to it. It has some really weird stuff for Eldar in particular. I know GW Rules Team came out a while ago for their tournaments and said, yeah, you can use Fate dice on your Eldar rerolls.
Mm-hmm.
Not the case with WTC. Was not the case at Richmond.
Right.
If we're being
Yeah.
fair, I don't think Fate dice make a huge difference anymore.
Yeah,
They are
probably
great
not.
for units, but they
Definitely
also
not
had the
as
weird
big.
like so they also had the weird like charge through walls thing, right? Where like you can charge a unit on the other side of the wall, even if you can't fit your base in. If you have the appropriate distance, like you're allowed to exist in the wall for the combat phase. So there's like no benefit to barricading yourself in a big stone building, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that was kind of how that was the setup. So Richmond was great. There's like 135 players. I drove up, we all drove all the way down there, and then I paired into my own team twice through the course of the event. But
That's really
yeah, it went
rare.
well.
That's really rare to
Yeah,
do. That's funny
yeah,
though.
it happens though. So yeah, I went 4-2 overall. Got off to a rough start. Had driven down, that early that morning, and because I'm an idiot, I stayed up playing Fallout 4 for some nostalgia the night before till like 2 a.m. Um,
We've all been there, man.
yeah, so um, I guess I should get to the list before I get into the games, but if you're interested in run through that, the so basically the list is looking very different from the Eldar meta. I had plenty of people tell me that I was silly for taking it, but it's the Wayleaper, Avatar, Eldrad, who I'm on the fence about, Farseer, Warlock Skyrunner, Storm Guardians, Double Prism, 2x3 Shroud Runners, 2x5 Swooping Hawks, and then 18 Windriders split up a little weird, a 9, a 6, and a 3. And the idea behind that was just, all right, well, I can break 3 off if I need to go do something because we're
Hmm.
feeling a little low on unit count now.
Right.
Um, the way the list works, it's a little weird. Eldar are fantastic at not letting the opponent know what we're gonna do, like take the tactical objectives and keep them on their toes. This list likes to go fixed objectives every single time. I took engage and homers in every single match. Um, the idea being that the bikes, the shrouds, they're going to flank out, do the early 10th edition like Eldar flank thing. The prisms are going to pop some transports and stuff from a distance and make it safe for the Wind Riders to expose themselves. The Storm Guardians are a weird one, and I never would have even thought of them, never would have considered them. But the recent points change was like, why not check it out? Sticky objectives sound cool. Um, they paired with the Warlock, and the Storm Guardians with the Warlock are absolutely insane. You suddenly have a sticky objective infantry that can unit that can fan out over 2 objectives to provide stickies, going 13 inches every turn, putting fusion guns in people's faces, and um, they ended up being like the surprise MVP in this list. It was wild. But
That's awesome.
those and the bikes. The bikes obviously were insane. And leaning into, assuming the orks are going to start showing up and we're going to start seeing, kind of more hordy armies showing up. My local meta had a lot of Tyranid players who started running some boards, and that was infuriating for a little while. But I figure we need volume of shots, right? So that's what they're there for. And looking at the math, we'll get into that in a bit, I'm sure. But the math is bonkers on Wind Riders. Like, the Eldar way is like we have a specific tool for everything, and nope, the bikes are good into almost everything, all the way up to Imperial Knights. It's wild. So those did really really well. By like round 3 in every game, the Storm Guardians had sticky probably 3 objectives, and that lets this list do some weird things. So as you're flanking out to get your homers and you're engaged, you obviously you throw the Eldar, or excuse me, you throw the Avatar forward, you buff him. He kind of provides your little block in the middle. You tuck something in behind him, behind a wall, to just tag homers until you can get in their backfield. So you just keep doing that in the center. Um, but because of the Storm Guardians, the whole list was able to dynamically move in a way that I've never been able to do with Eldar. Come turn 3 or so, when deep strikes, reserves, they've all been kind of teased out. You've kind of thinned the board a little bit. The fact that you have those sticky objectives that really like can't be touched that easily
Hmm.
allows you to just throw your whole army forward. Like, where prisms might, in my old list, they would sit back and hold an objective and try to snipe from there. Nah. Same with the autark. Like, nope, you could just throw everything forward. So late game, turn 4, turn 5, where you're usually thinned out and you're kind of awkwardly clinging to objectives. It's just a huge force multiplier. It works really really well. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And it's funny, I've been kind of singing their praises for a while because I kind of realized the same thing, that wow, this unit allows me as an Eldar player to have a lot more flexibility in where I place my units and what I'm taking in my list, you know? And
yeah,
they are very unassuming. And actually it's funny because there was a couple of videos out there kind of more early on in the edition, and even after some things got, pretty serious nerfs, kind of, saying that, Storm Guardians were possibly one of the contenders for the worst Eldar unit in the Codex, index, I mean, and it's just laughing at
well,
that, like
we have,
what?
it's because we have a bad habit of looking at things on paper, right? We look at
Right,
damage output and durability. Maybe we look at movement. Yeah, we when we think of combos, we try to stack. What's the craziest damage? Like, how do I table? How do I wipe? And that for a long time, this edition was the Eldar way. Like, we could, so why
right.
not? So they and you're right, they're very unassuming in the list, especially. I mean, I sent you a picture of my display board from the event,
Oh,
which is this
absolutely.
one
And for
crazy
those of you
crafty.
guys out there watching this, this is his army. It's absolutely beautiful. Let me give you guys a close up of it. Wow. And this diorama is just amazing with the Wraith Knight coming out of it. kind of giving those Exodite vibes for anybody who's watched that, but like better. Just crawling
Makes
out of
sense.
there. It's like it's very cool.
If you see
Absolutely.
it in person, it's even better. There's a video of it on my Instagram, but the fog is billowing out of the bottom of this Eldar platform, and the webway like light is spinning and shimmering.
That is so
I,
cool.
I used a speaker for it to give it music at Nova. My wife was not impressed. She's like, you didn't come to bed on time for a month, and you had time to give this thing music." um, but I thought it was cool. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, you look at the army, you see it as an opponent, right? And you see the way it's displayed on the board. You see the avatar, and like that's the case in most armies. But on this one, you see LED lit prism cannons in the avatar, and it's like, all right, there's the big threats. These bikes
Hmm.
are going to be annoying, and so many opponents, even really good opponents, they're trying to deal with the avatar threat that's in their face early, and where their firepower would be much better spent on the bikes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Avatar being kind of a distraction Carnifex in this type of list, able to kind of draw the firepower away from your more important elements, which is really, it's a good idea. And you
Yeah,
had a lot of success with the list. I mean, you said before you went four and
yeah,
two with it, which is very good. Going positive in an event like this with an army that a lot of people probably, like you said, were kind of like, oh, you're crazy for taking this many Windriders, but actually did really, really well.
yeah. And most of the, I mean, we can get into the games in a minute here, but most of the games were I tabled them or damn near
Yeah.
tabled them. They were like the bikes were violently successful. Um,
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of how Eldar really should play is they should play to kill your opponent, you know?
yeah, even with the yes and no. I mean, even with the avatar though, like the first inclination, and this is kind of what I did wrong in my last game, is to throw him forward and try to make sure he nukes something before he dies. Been finding through all these games that he does much better playing as like a kind of like a counter punch, like hide him behind something up front, make people come dig him out, have him there ready to smack anything, punish anything that hops in the center. He cannot just stand out there and take it on the chin anymore.
Right.
There's too much lethality out there, but he certainly can turn three after you thin some stuff out. So I mean, I was fire and fading him to get him into land raiders and stuff turn three, and just to set him up and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely some threat removal against most meta armies that needs to happen first. Um,
Absolutely.
some changes I'm considering coming out of this. The one big one, and I should have done the math beforehand to realize this. I had been running Eldrad with like 20 swooping or no 20 Shadow Specters because I thought it was funny. I was trying it in RTTs and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, when you have the bikes getting lethal hits from the Shroud Runners and getting their full natural reroll hits against anything that's on an objective, Doom doesn't make a difference into almost any target. Like it's crazy, but the lethal hits are already doing so much, and every lethal hit is taking away from Doom's opportunities. I figured it would be negligible, but when you look at it and you look at the math in a lot of targets, Doom does nothing. Eldrad's kind of cool as a sniper, and he's kind of cool for some other stuff, but I think your points are better spent. You don't go through the fate dice anymore, so I think I'm going to drop him. And if you do keep him, Doom on its own is it's usually slightly worse than lethals. Um, Still good, but you just don't need it in this list at least. I'm gonna add three more bikes because you know why not? And
Absolutely.
then I think I'm gonna drop the Warlock Farseer or the Warlock Skyrunner.
Hmm.
He's nice. I found myself taking -1 to hit more often than stripping cover. I didn't need to strip cover often, but I think a Viper or multiple Vipers would be better suited for it. I mean, you're getting the extra Bite Lance. You're getting one more unit that can do things, tag things. Um, but if you are in a bad spot, you can also strip cover from a target and have all your bikes tee off into it instead of just propping one up. So
Right.
and then of course my the bane of my existence this edition, I seem to pair into Tyranids at least twice an event. Um, and into Tyranids, being able to have the indirect fire of the D cannon, bring it in from reserves,
Hmm.
immediately nuke the Biovore is such a math changer for scoring. It immediately shuts down all their free secondaries, all their big secondaries instead of little secondaries. It cripples Tyranids and makes them work harder with what they have. So I'm tempted to fit a D cannon in. It's not in my draft list for next time, but that's always kind of in the back of my mind.
Yeah. It's a very good tech, actually, because, biovores are one of the only ways, like you said, that Tyranids can reliably score secondaries with the, those spore mines.
Yeah,
I had a
I
buddy
don't
in
like how
college
static
that
it is
played
though.
those, and yeah, it's funny. Yeah, he always used those darn things, and those were so annoying back in the day.
Yeah.
But
Oh man, that's what this list honestly is just. So I mean, all through ninth, I was running Hail of Doom Eldar, so I had 27 bikes in my list and 3D cannons, and like, man, this like, it's not what we were, but it gives me that nostalgia every time I look at this list now. So, like the D cannons have like a special place in my heart just from that. They're now more like a very specific tool than they used to be. They used to just be a wild beat stick, but
oh,
um,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
That's cool. That's a
Um,
really good idea. Let's talk a little bit about the math behind this list because I think, like you
yeah,
talked
sure.
about earlier, I think some people really do underestimate what Windriders can really pull off and how much damage they can do and
Yeah,
just kind of the crazy stuff that they can go into. And now we have an Orc Codex which is looking
yep,
to be pretty much the top dog. It's looking to be like Necrons were, if not more so, before their nerf.
yeah, yep. They are chubby green Necrons.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to some of the the orc players from Richmond and stuff, and like it's kind of cool. This is one of those, especially when it's like people from tournaments, people you see every once in a while, people from your region, like people think they're going to keep their secrets on like the internet groups. So like, you're not even an orc. Get out of here. Get out of here. Like, but I straight up messaged one of the other orc players the other day. I was like, hey man, how do I beat you? Because this doesn't look good for me. And we had like an hour long conversation about what he was worried about and like what he was thinking about running. And so like again, just like good people in the community, it's fun to talk about. But yeah, so orcs go one of two ways for us, right? And I'm really hoping that the rest of the factions out there do something to solve bully boys because that does not look good. Um, and a lot of people think I'm crazy for saying this. Like a lot of the people on the different, the Eldar Facebooks and discords and stuff are like, "Are you insane? Greentide is so much worse." But looking at the math, it's not. So if you run Windriders, because we're going to need the volume of shots. So before we get into the math, like any of the math that I do here, assume this math was done assuming that we're getting lethals because the Windriders are paired with the shrouds and you have to protect your shrouds. That's why I bring two of them because one of them's certainly going to die. You got to bring the lethals for these guys to really tee off. Otherwise, they're good into light infantry, they're good into medium infantry. Lethals let them slaughter anything. Because and this is important to note from the Necron FAQ. A lot of us read their rules initially when we decided they were crap and we never touched them again. We read that they re-roll ones to hit against the closest target, and if that target is also on an objective, then you re-roll all hits. Well, the Necron FAQ says nope. Uh, exact wording of that rule for multiple armies. They do not have to be the closest objective. They just, or excuse me, the closest enemy. They just have to be on an objective, and then you get full re-rolls to hit with all 9 of your bikes, and it's crazy. So if like one model is on the objective, you're getting it into the whole unit, and it just spikes the map on these insanely with lethals. Um, I prepared a little bit of math on this, just because I was trying to figure these out, and this proved true in a lot of my matches. We'll talk about the matches too, but I played into like Firestorm, Space Marines twice. I played into the Triple Land Raider, the Land Raider Double Lancer, and some of the staples of that list. Some of the really big problems in that list are the aggressors. There's always like the 6 by aggressor blob. Um, there's a lot more you can do with bikes. You can add Blade Storm, which is going to usually into infantry spike you an extra couple of kills. You can do Doom, which we already talked about doesn't do much in this combo. Um, but yeah, so I'm assuming that there's no cover. I'm getting my full rerolls because you tend to, and I'm getting lethals because I can absolutely control that. Into 6 aggressors with these, you're killing 4 or 5 of them. So it's 4 on its own, it's 5 with Blade Storm or with Doom added. Either one, you can spike to 5. And when you factor in the fact that the Shroud Runners are also shooting and also getting lethals, you're going to kill 5 of these. You're probably going to hurt a 6th. If you have anything else sitting by, if you have Swooping Hawks, um, you're going to put down that full break of 6 aggressors. And I forget how many points that is, but it's painful for them. And that's one of their big threat packages coming out of their Land Raider. They're going to, the Firestorm lists are, they're going to auto advance the Land Raider super far. They're going to dump the aggressors out. They're going to dump a bucket of shots in your face. Um, and that happened to me at one point. Actually, I lost 9 of my bikes and I thought I was screwed. The other bikes still just tore through everything. But yeah, so 1 unit of bikes, 240 points. plus the Shroud Runners, which are 80, but worth every penny of it. They're going to decimate 6 by aggressor blobs. Looking into the orc threat, 20 by greentide boyz with a pain boy are looking pretty scary. So it's T5, 5 up save, 5 up invul, 5 up feel no pain, rerolling once to save. Bottom line of this, you would think that the feel no pain would do a lot more, but because it's a 1 wound model and you're shooting a 2 damage weapon, it almost negates the feel no pain entirely. The pain boy doesn't matter. You don't need to snipe him out first. So 1 unit of bikes and 1 unit of shrouds are going to average 17 dead between the 2 of them. So you're just going to tear that whole boyz unit apart. If you bring 2 by 9 of these bikes and you play them right and keep them alive, I'm thinking with greentide boyz and my list, it probably sounds like prisms pop trucks. They sit up front and move block. Avatar sits behind them as a counter punch threat, trying to stem the flow of green boys into your face. Your hawks are going to have to screen and stuff to deal with the jump. But if things went your way, and I need to see how this plays out, 2 big units of bikes supported with lethal hits, they would kill all 6 boyz units that you see in that list in 3 turns, or very, very heavily thin them out. And then you have so much mobility, so much other stuff that you can up be downy with the shroud or with the hawks. You can throw the way leaper out there. There's so much that you can do late game, kind of once you thin that board out, to go start untagging all their sticky objectives, because that whole tide is running towards you, trying to wog turn 2. And I just think this is going to play out really well on them. So yeah, man, I watching your last video, I feel like we're on the same page. But yeah, that's the math, man. One unit of these with a unit of shrouds is going to kill 17 boyz.
And that's really crazy. I mean, to think that the most durable possibly type of list that is out there right now can be shredded in a matter of 3 turns.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see some other stuff in there. You're going to see Gazgul in there. That's what you have the avatar for. The getting rid of Makari is what you have grenades on your swooping hawks for, grenades on your Autark. I think, and I got to see really how they move. And I think the jump and being some movement shenanigans are the one thing that could really change the math in my mind. But I think that is a surprisingly winning matchup for us. We get into bully boyz, not so much.
Yeah. So let's talk about that detachment a little bit, the bully boyz, because they're much tougher, right? They get 2 turns of Wa. They're going to be running a bunch of mega noms, and
yeah, you're looking at 3 by 6 mega noms with character buffs, and it's gross.
Yeah. So what do Windriders look? Have you done the math into mega noms? Because I'm sure the Windriders do much worse into them, right?
Yeah, it's not good. And so my math was all assumed that this is happening during the WOG, and they're fully buffed up by their characters. You gotta look at the mega nods as what they are. They're tougher canoptic wraiths with Technomancer. And just like everybody else out there, we really can't touch these. 9 bikes fully buffed are going to take out 2 mega knobs, leaving 4 and their character. Fortunately, outside the WOD, they're very slow, and this turns into a game of move blocking. You're going to have to sacrifice things. You're going to have to move block and slow them down. I think you try to pick off one of them. If I can, knowing that they're going to slow way down after their WOG, there's a couple ways to do it. Either you hide and ride out the WOG, which you could have a lot of stuff in reserves and deep strike, whatever. That is a risk though, because if you do and they decide to hold off on their WOG till turn 3, turn 4, get that for 2 turns, it's going to be really bad. I think if we play them on supply drop, I don't see a path to victory there. Supply drop is going to be terrible, knowing that they can just WOG this. They can sit back, they can wait, they can hide in terrain and play our game. And then when the points really matter, turn 4 and 5, they can just put all this stuff on it. It's brutal. So what I'm hoping is that the rest of the meta solves mega knobs to push them towards greentide, so that we can be there waiting.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's really where it's at, because like you said, if you get that mission, there's realistically nothing you can do as far as being able to beat it.
We'll talk about that. That happened to me in game 6. So
oh god, okay. Yeah,
against canoptic wraiths.
Yeah.
But yeah, so real quick before we move on, a couple more math pieces in this, because this builds a little bit on, and I saw your video after I did the tournament and stuff, and I was immediately excited. I was like, yes, he thinks like I do. Let's do this. but I think you stopped at like light vehicles, but they punch even higher. Looking at the, throw them into a Land Raider Redeemer. Um, you're gonna have your get your reroll hits on, and your instead of rerolling just your fails, reroll all your ones through fives with lethal. Um, they're they're gonna put 8 damage in, 10 with Doom or Bladestorm. That puts a Land Raider Redeemer one unsaved Fire Prism shot away from dying. It it's not like you're wiping a Land Raider, but you're doing so much damage with a unit that wasn't meant for it, a unit that's there to kill medium infantry, um, and you're punching up that efficiently, and it goes even further. So the really interesting piece of math for me was looking at these into armigers versus big knights. The math doesn't change. So if you're shooting into an armiger, 9x bikes with shrouds are flat out going to average kill one every single time. They're just going to blow up an armiger. It's 12.5 unsaved damage average. And you could spike that even further. You could have something else waiting to finish it off. Math changes a little bit if you let them get honored, but that's kind of the game with knights. Don't let them get honored. Um, the math doesn't change to the Canis Rex. You're still doing 12 damage into Canis Rex. So 2x9 bikes are a couple damage away from killing Canis Rex. So, like they're a couple of lucky rolls away from killing Canis Rex, um, which is just insane. Like everything in the Eldar index, right, is for a purpose, right? We have all these little custom tools that are amazing at what they do. Turns out bikes are just really, really good into almost everything. The bad matches for them, I mean, it's the bad matches for everyone. We already talked about Bully Boys Mega Knobs. You got the 6 by Canoptic Wraiths with Technomancers. By the math on that one, and I learned this after the game because this was my first opportunity getting to play into Necrons this edition. 2x9 with support from lethals will wipe 6 by Canoptic Wraiths or just about. And that's the Wraiths with the Technomancer. So you throw all your bikes into them and you're going to clear one of these. And that's a big hit for them early because it really limits, how they can bully you with the Satan or with the Doomstalkers. Not having their big durable blobs and losing them very early in the game is painful. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to commit all your bikes to it, but we can clear those in a turn. And then, I looked at like Heldrex with 10 Sword Brethren. You stack everything you can give them, right? So they're in Righteous Crusaders, they're getting the Tannhauser's Relic, they're getting 5 up Feel No Pain. You're going to kill like 3 models. If they have Armor Content on, you'll get 4 if they don't. If they don't, you add Doom, it's 5. But the 3 wound models really kind of kill the efficiency a little bit on these when you're dealing with the Feel No Pain. So yeah, like that one's tough to clear.
Right. That's probably one
You
where something like Fire Dragons would be a little bit more efficient for the points.
Yeah, maybe, and that's what everyone keeps telling me to run. They're like, "Ah, you're dumb, run Fire Dragons," and like I don't know. It's probably like a problem in my brain here, but I hate running the meta list.
Mm.
Um, and I with Eldar for me, it's about the mobility. Like it's about like just being able to say like you can't catch me, and I don't like the dump the dragons there and then they kind of foot slog and they're stuck. Like I love the speed of this list. Like the slowest thing in this list is the Avatar at 10 inches. Your infantry's going 13. Everything else is 14 inches. Especially late game when you're thin, that's just so much fun.
Yeah.
I like the speed. So
Yeah, and that's really cool. I really dig your list, honestly. I think it works really well. And, you mentioned the Avatar being the slowest thing, but, the Avatar's fast. Avatar can advance +1 and
you should
charge
see
+1.
you should see Jaws drop when you fire and fade him to set him up for the next round.
Oh yeah.
Avatar clears 20 inches and eyeballs go wide up, across the
Oh,
table.
absolutely. It's funny because, in ninth edition, Fire and Fade was 7. So my gaming group was kind of used to that. And then at the beginning of 10th edition, when it changed to movement value, I'd say, "Oh, I'm going to use Fire and Fade." And they'd be like, "All right." And then I would move, the additional 10. They'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'd be like, "I'm Fire and Fading. It's movement." They'd be like, "That's broken."
Yeah, and they tend to convince it. They could, and I try to be really clear about it at the beginning of the game. I run through all the shenanigans. Like I don't want to win on a gotcha,
Right, of
but
course.
people are still so focused on like Phantasm, they tend to confuse the two. They're like, wait, I thought you could only do that with infantry. Like, no, man, this is Fire and Fade. This is coming at you.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's Fire and Fade is still great, and this list thrives on it. It needs it. You can't waste your CP on other stuff. You're Fire and Fading something every turn. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, considering 2 prisms, big units of Windriders, Avatar of Cain, you're definitely going to be wanting to do that. And then What I find really cool too about the Avatar and Storm Guardian combo is better advance rolls because you have the Warlock, this automatic 6, but also +1, right, as well because of the Avatar of Cain,
Is he on the
which
advance?
is
I thought it
really
was just in
cool.
the charge.
It's both.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even look at that because I'm usually
It's
not advancing anything.
it's very
Um,
subtle, but it actually does give +1 to your advances as well.
yeah, and that was insane. I mean, yeah, so he's kind of a distraction front effects, but not really because he's brutal. Um, but nobody was paying attention to the guardians, and if they did, they weren't committing to them enough. Like in cover, without an invul save, um, some of them would die. Wouldn't be the ones I cared about. You keep the fusion guns alive, you keep the attached characters alive. They give you somewhere to park, like your Farseer, and in this case it was Eldrad if you needed to, if you come up against indirect.
Hmm.
And that was important, being able to bring those buffing units and not immediately lose them. This let them come out and sit there and really kind of take it for a little while. But those sticky objectives were just insane.
Yeah, it's a
You know,
very strong mechanic in the game that a lot of people kind of overlook, but it is game winning in my opinion, for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Now, something that was brought up to me recently in one of the videos that I did on Windriders was Windriders being weaker inherently against indirect fire, things like basilisks, than maybe some of our aspect warrior units. And I kind of wanted to pose the question to you. During your experience playing this list, did you run into that problem? Was that really a serious
No, not
consideration?
not on this one. And I had thought it through, and I kind of had my plan for it. So yes, they're going to be vulnerable to it. The -1 hit doesn't really do anything because you're already getting -1 hit from the indirect, unless it's something heavy. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, the Wind Riders are fragile, and they're like a key component to this. You can't let them get shot. That's part of why in my next go on this, I've taken the Warlock out. 202 or 240 point units sit really nicely in reserves, and bringing these shots in from an angle on the side will be just fine for me. So, um, the or one of them in the shrouds or something. But your big unit, you're going to be able to keep safe. You might just have to wait a little bit to bring them in, but yeah, I think playing in the guard though is a bad matchup. I mean, any indirect is always bad matchup for Eldar. It's going to be painful. Um, there might not be a lot of paths to victory on you know artillery heavy guard. I was
Right.
just as worried about playing in the death guard. There were some death guard units there with the triple plague burst, whatever's like
Hmm.
the indirects, and indirect would absolutely be bad. I didn't run into a lot of it right now, and I think outside of guard and death guard, you're not going to run into a lot of it. Um, like so much of it has been tuned down, and that's an interesting point too. Like with the orks coming, do we start looking at night spinners again? Um, they're just so hard to justify at 210.
Yeah, they're
But yeah,
really expensive.
fortunately, indirect threats have kind of been toned down with the exception of guard. So you kind of just hope not to pair into them, and if you do, you're gonna aim for a really nice 5-1.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guard is a little bit of a tricky thing, I think, for a lot of Eldar players, just because
Yeah,
massive amount of indirect. If you look at the competitive guard lists that have been winning, they all have a massive amount of artillery. You know,
yeah.
and
But
that's really hard to get
their
around.
stuff's also not very, outside their tanks, their stuff's not very durable. So if you reserve the bikes, like, I mean, they got to come score somewhere, right? The artillery can't all hide.
Yep.
Your prisms are kind of safe-ish from it. Maybe you throw a prism into reserves and snap an angle and just start sniping the backfield. But when they come out to start trying to score, the bikes are going to wreck most of their options that are out there skirmishing and trying to grab objectives. The prisms are going to punish absolutely any tanks that come out. Like they're just so reliable.
Yeah. And you
I think it'd be
mentioned the D
painful.
cannon as well, and that's another option. You know.
Yeah, you just got to be ready to reserve it so that it can get within range of stuff depending on deployment.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I haven't played guard yet this edition. I'm interested in it. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Well, do you want to talk a little bit about that game that you played against Necrons and the
Yeah, sure.
Wraiths?
Well, I mean, the other ones are much like less interesting and shorter, so we could just take them in order if you want.
Yeah, sure. Let's
Um,
go ahead and do that.
yeah, so the first one, it was a really narrow boss in the Tyranids. It was the usual Tyranid good stuff. They had like 2x10 gargoyles, the Biovore, exocrines, all kinds of big bugs, like a lot of big bugs. Those are all popular right now. Um, so like very, very narrow boss, 79 and 76. I set my hawks up and was ready to do my secondaries, and I just forgot them twice. Like my brain just wasn't working that morning. I forgot to do homers once, and I forgot to do engage once. That's 4 points for the win right there. I was just a little off my game on that one. It kind of sucked. My opponent was great too. I don't want to take anything away from him, but I made some major mistakes in that one, and threw in an energy drink and came back to play Tyranids again later and kind of redeemed myself a little bit. But
Nice. It was the
next up was
Fallout.
Sisters.
It's the Fallout 4.
Yeah, yeah, which sucks, by the way. You get all nostalgic after watching the show, and then you realize that Fallout 4 doesn't really feel like Fallout. You got to go back further.
Yeah, absolutely. I did the same exact thing. Watched the show, started playing Fallout 4, and I was like,
Yeah, it's more like
uh,
like let me go collect power armor pieces. Like,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, the next game was Sisters Battle, typical Sisters Battle, good stuff. They had I forget the name, the indirect tanks that they have. That kind
Exorcists.
of like strength 10 indirect is kind of like, oh god. And so I guess I did kind of play some indirect, but if I recall correctly, he kind of prioritized the wrong targets, didn't really go after the bikes. The prisms cleared the tanks out really fast, and then the bikes flowed in, poured in, slaughtered everything else. That one went 93-55, and he was near tabled at the end.
Nice.
Ultramarines Firestorm were up next. That was a 89-62 win. They had the Redeemer, 2 Lancers, the Aggressor Blob. He caught my bikes. He caught my 9 bikes, so he came all the way down the long table edge with the Aggressor, or with the Land Raider, dumped the Aggressors out, and the bikes were gone. Like the Warlock and 1 bike were left, and they lived and they scored later. I had to pivot and take care of that threat, but that was a little scary. I thought that was going to go poorly, but everything else was just so damn efficient. It didn't matter. The Prisms picked up the Lancers and the Redeemer. That was the one where I did the Fire and Fade on the Avatar, threw him in there by the Land Raider, or excuse me, the Lancers really early. And then the bikes, as soon as the vehicles were popped, the bikes that were left, there were still 9 of them, just tore through everything, and it was. Maybe we should take a moment to say bikes are bad. GW, don't nerf these. Don't touch them, please. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
they're great. They just tore through everything. Next one was Tyranids, similar list, some differences. A little more shooty, a little less melee, but 90-60 win, nearly tabled it. Another Firestorm Marines after that. It was Salamanders this time. That one was closer. It was 89-80. But at the end, again, nearly tabled. That one was 3 Redeemers, 1x6 Aggressors, Eradicators, all the good stuff. Really, the main difference between the 2 lists was the characters and the fact that one swapped a couple Redeemers out for a couple of Lancers, which against us, I mean, it's the Redeemers are the scarier threat with the auto hits, and
Right.
didn't matter. The Prisms together are killing at least 1 a turn. Bikes flow in, kill everything that was in it, move on to the next one. And with GW terrain, that's doable. Like, you can do it safely. And then the big one. So yeah, we did Necrons. Necrons, that sucked. I won't blame any dice, but I will blame the other circumstances here. And obviously, like game 6, it was another 4-1 player. He'd been doing well. He knew the list well, ran it well. But it was corners deployment, so it put him and his wraiths really close to me really early. I went first, which is terrible because it was supply drop. So I still think supply drop's like the weirdest mission out there. It's definitely the worst one for us, but like those 3 categories right there, like that's not good for us.
Yeah, perfect storm for sure.
Yeah, like good luck holding that objective at the end. Ultimately, it came down to so going into round 5, I was ahead 54-52, so like really narrow. He drew tempting targets with only the Omega objective left, so I couldn't even like put him somewhere else. Had a big charge with like a Doomstalker that just tipped him over the OC to take it from me. He like came back for 25 points in turn 5.
Wow.
Yeah. I hadn't played Necron yet either. I've been like looking for it, and my buddies who play him, we just never paired it in an event, and we didn't find time for a practice game or whatever. And so I was learning as we went, and so honestly, I'm actually really happy with this one, man. Like it was a great learning experience. My opponent was fantastic, and like it's like 2 of my opponents were my teammates, so like I expect them to be cool. But this is like the first tournament I've gone to in a long time where just everyone was just a genuine pleasure to play with. Like it was, it was like playing with adults. So it's great.
Yeah, that's always an awesome feeling when you play against somebody and you have a good experience.
Oh man, we were sweating it too. Like we were all kind of thinking about it before. So this when there's a stream there at a big event like this, everybody else gets hard dice down. But the stream goes on as long as it has to, because you're not going to bring a streamer in, and cut a game short. Like, the viewers get pissed, right?
Right.
So we're all sitting there for like an extra 20 minutes watching the stream game, and just thinking about, like, looking at everyone else who's like, 4-1. It's like, oh crap, who am I going to get paired into? And not gonna lie, there are a few where you're like, he's a good dude, but he's not fun to play against. It's like, so,
Right.
but it worked out. We all got great opponents to play against. The list, for anyone who cares, was pretty standard. It was the 2x6 Wraiths. One of them had the Technomancer, the 3x Doomstalkers, the Void Dragon, the Nightbringer. The Avatar died comically early. I played him aggressively, which usually I kind of hold him back a little bit. I was talking to another Eldar player before I went into this game, and I was like, "Oh crap, I've never played these guys. What do you do?" And he looked at my list. He's like, "You got to get the Avatar into him early." It's like, okay, here we go. Like, Leroy Jenkins, and he
Yeah,
got sent right back to my board very quickly.
that is exactly
Um,
what will happen usually,
yeah,
unfortunately.
um, yeah. I was trying to get him to a target before all the targets got into him, and I should have waited. Should have had some strategic patience on that. But good learning lesson. So, um, I could have done small things better, but honestly, this is really hard match to play into. So, the fact that it came down to a charge at the end to out OC on an objective, like, yeah, I'll take that, man. That was that one still made me happy. So
Yeah. And that's all you can hope for at the end of the day, win or lose, like have a good game, it to be close, it to be, like not decided until the very end. I mean, those are the best games. So
yeah,
that's cool.
absolutely. It was the and this list, I especially against like my own teammates, I hate when you play a list that does so well that you like. I found myself apologizing to opponents. I was like, I know this is like really one sided, man. I'm sorry. Like this, sometimes you just don't get good matches or whatever. Um, but yeah, this list will just, it'll leave some factions, some lists out there just rocking in the shower, like
Yeah.
trying to figure out what the hell those bikes were shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very deadly, very deadly. And I actually love the inclusion of two prisms in the list too. I think it works and pairs really well with what you got, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
you need like you need a reliable baseline. You need the hard target removal. You need to pop the transports so that the bikes can get what's that get at what's in them. I know this tournament using the WTC rules didn't allow it, but they're also usually just super reliable in Overwatch. Between them and the Avatar, you have this little triangle of spaced out threats that can handle a lot of different things, and especially with like the terrain. And a lot of people complain about the GW templates. The fact that the template on the ground blocks line of sight. In addition, it's not just like the walls of the building.
right,
The map looks like a shooting gallery, but it's not. And the denser the terrain is, I think, like, people say that the denser the terrain is, the less valuable tanks are. I think relatively the more valuable prisms are. And just knowing that we were playing on these terrain templates, you're never not going to get to shoot with the prisms with linked fire. You're gonna move one up. You're going to be pretty sure that whatever it's shooting at is going to be dead, and nothing else is going to have an angle back on it. Or you can always fire in Fatal Prism too, but um, they're just so reliable, and they're looking at the things that you're seeing frequently, the big bugs, the triple land raiders, they soften up the target, and then the bikes come gobble everything up, while the Avatar just kind of holds the center. So yeah, they're, I think, like, no, if I changed the Avatar out for something else, or I changed out the prisms for something else, or I changed the bikes out for something else, this list wouldn't work anymore. But those together are, for me, like the way I like to play, they're synergizing really, really well.
yeah, and that's what I see about the list too. It's not so much that prisms, yeah, they're expensive. Like a lot of players will say, well, 180 points for it's a lot, and that's true. But they synergize well with the list, which is what makes them good. And it's funny. I recently covered another list that ran a lot of Windriders at ValleyCon, and it was more of a probably list that looked a little bit more like a wild host, like a
Yeah.
Samhain
Oh,
kind of
he
list.
committed, man,
Yeah, he would like went full on,
and that looks
and
so fun.
it looks incredibly fun. I ran a list very similar in the beginning of the edition where I proxied models to actually get it on the table and run it, and it was super fun. It was a blast to play. And I was like, man, if I had the dough to drop on this, I probably would play this for the rest of the edition because it was so fun. And that's when I kind of learned that Windriders are a little bit more than meets the eye, you know.
Yeah,
But
there
because
were so many other shiny objects,
yeah,
up until
exactly.
now. And now I'm just kind of like realizing, like, oh yeah, these exist, and they're great.
Yeah, they're
Um,
really good.
yeah,
And the
And I mean, for everyone, like the most controversial thing in this list is still those Storm Guardians. Like if you look at, I mean, your Discord probably talks about it just as much as the the other Eldar server does, and just as much as the two different Eldar Facebook groups do. Everyone's been just hating on these all edition, right? And
right,
the 15-point change was just interesting enough that like they're surprising, man, with rerolls, and like it seems like not much for shooting, but those two fusion guns do a surprising amount of work with melted damage.
yeah,
You tuck these guys in there next to the avatar, like turn 2, turn 3, after they've stickied a bunch of stuff. Maybe after they've stickied 2 objectives in a turn because they can spread out so far and slinky. Um, yeah, the fusion gun's surprisingly good.
they really are. I mean, I've had them kill Terminators, pop two Terminators, two failed invul
Yeah.
saves, and it's like that's almost their points value right then and there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're really surprisingly good at trading with other, marine equivalents as well. I've had them trade into infiltrators and win. A lot of people say, "Oh, they're not good at trading. They don't do any damage in combat." Well, they do more damage in shooting than probably Guardian defenders.
Yeah, that happened in one of the Space Marine games. I said almost exactly those words. Like, yeah, I mean, they're kind of whatever. They got a couple fusion guns, whatever, and then like pretty sure they popped the vehicle or something. And he's like, oh, they're kind of whatever, huh? And then I was like, sorry, man. Like statistically, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And he started shooting the avatar, and he got him down to 3 wounds. I was like, we were talking back and forth just casually. I was like, yeah, I mean, you got him at this point, man. Like he's tanky. He's not that tanky. You got a lot of shots left. Statistically, he's screwed. Um, and then the avatar lived, and he's like, oh, all right, just like the Guardians, right? Like there were a few like lucky rolls like that and stuff too, but there were plenty
Oh,
of
that's
unlucky ones as
great.
well. So
That's great.
yeah, no, honestly, it was just a fun event, man. I get antsy if I go like too long without an event. I'm usually playing like a couple of RTTs, a month. But uh, you know, very, very much looking forward to another GT at your hobby place next month, and then Nova coming up in the summer, and yeah, I think I finally got the paint scheme I like too. I'm committed to the display board. Uh, I made it to
Yeah.
the display, like the final gallery at Nova last year, and I made it to it on this one again.
Nice.
Um,
It
I need to
looks
hit.
really well. It looks
I need
really
to.
nice.
I'm dropping 3 points every time. Apparently, one of my Windriders has a mold line on its helmet somewhere or something. So yeah, I think I'm gonna spend the next couple months here casually painting to the scoring rubric.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think this list is here to stay for me for a little while. Unless we just pivot hardcore into bully boys. So we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
man.
That's awesome.
What are you running next?
I don't know. I've had a lot of fun playing with fire dragons. I love fire dragons because when I was, kind of growing up in 5th edition and 4th edition, they were one of my favorite units, especially in 5th because they were one of the only units in the codex at the time which was usable. Did you play back then in 5th edition and prior?
No, I got into it, and this is, I mean, this ties back to the breast cancer thing. So I got into it back in like 2017, 2018, I think.
Hmm.
So I'd been on a deployment, I was an active duty officer in the Marine Corps for a long time, and you don't have a lot to do on a lot of deployments. You end up reading a lot of books. Somebody handed me the Space Wolves Codex, and that was like my first introduction to 40K. Bit off pretty hard on that, and then it wasn't until my wife got sick. So I mentioned my wife's a breast cancer survivor, and um, we were like, we were very outdoorsy. We were living in California, and we spent all our weekends up in the mountains, hiking, camping. Like we were never inside. And as she was going through chemo, she'd be down for like 15, 16 hours a day, just sleeping it off. And I was very fortunate. My unit at the time was like, your place is with her. Don't miss any of her appointments. Don't like, so they took care of me and let me be there for her.
That's nice.
But as a result, it was kind of like nobody was really there for me, right? And that
Right.
that sounds kind of selfish, I guess, but it was more like I was alone with my thoughts all day while she
Right.
was sleeping it off, and I needed something to do. Like I couldn't go outside. I couldn't like so I needed something to do with my hands, and we had a local hobby shop, and I just like grabbed the box. I think it was like I grabbed the box of like Space Wolves, the little infantry ones, and um, you know. My level of nerdiness has never been the same since. So, um, you know, jumped into that hard. Played Space Wolves for like an edition. Dabbled in some other things. I've got one army that I've been meaning to paint. I've got an ad mech army where every single model is heavily converted to look dark mech.
Nice. I like
There's some
that.
like unpainted pictures on the Instagram too. But yeah, like I want to do a display board for that. but I'm also not such a glutton for punishment that I want to play AdMech now. So
Yeah, they're a little awkward, and
pivot back someday.
yeah,
I
unfortunately.
like the fragile glass cannon vibe, whereas AdMech are like the absolute opposite, where they're just like, we're just gonna sit here, but you can't kill us all.
Right.
That's that's not fun for me.
Yeah, they kind of feel way weirder than they used to. You know.
Yeah, it used to be, like laser chickens running down the table edge, like, just decimating stuff, and like the rust stalkers and stuff coming out of nowhere. Like, they feel a lot less dynamic now. They feel like, like skinny robot Death Guard now.
Yeah, unfortunately, 10th edition wasn't kind to them in the way that it was kind to
Well,
other
neither was
armies.
mine. And that's what scared me the most at the beginning of this edition when we came out of the gate too hot, and I'm, kind of begging anyone who listened, like, hey guys, like, yeah, we're a little too spicy, but like, let's wait for some actual data before the nerfs, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, and I was really opposed to, like, the knee jerk nerfs on this, just because I had seen what they did to AdMech the edition before,
Right.
that they just never recovered from. Right, like
Yeah.
they have like one named character now, and he sucks. And yeah, so like I was just like, oh man, here we go. This army that I've started to love is going to get the AdMech treatment, and 4 rounds of nerfs later, we're still here,
Yeah.
still doing okay. Like, we're not, I don't think I've seen I think someone got third. There was a GT last weekend, right? Someone took third with Eldar.
I think so. I think that sounds familiar, actually. You
But other
know.
than that, it's been a quiet few months. So,
Yeah.
but that's, I feel pretty good about the 4-2, the 5-1 finishes. I'll take that for sure.
Yeah. I
It
think
feels good to be
for
still be viable.
absolutely. I think for the most part, Eldar look pretty good. But they're not to the point where they're going to take top tables every single tournament that there is.
Yeah,
So that's a
it was
good
kind of
place
funny,
to
like
be in.
watching some of the other, the YouTube channels and stuff. I was watching like an Art of War video on the reactions to the MFM, um,
Yeah.
and I won't throw stones, but like someone made a comment that are like, on the last points upgrade or points nerfs that we had,
Hmm.
this last month. They're like, oh, those were necessary. It's like, oh, it's like you had a 47% win rate for the last 2 months. Like,
Right.
I wouldn't call anything necessary.
Yeah, definitely not
But
necessary, but internal balance wise,
yeah, I am very glad
understand.
they shook it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have pivoted to this, and I'm realizing like this is so much more fun. Um, so yeah, like I'm grateful just for that. They maybe try some new things and pull some old units out, and
Yeah.
um, yeah,
GW has missed the mark before, especially with Eldar, because we are a very, kind of finicky army, and they have overcorrected in the past. Like, I would
yeah,
say in ninth edition, they overcorrected big time at
yep,
one point after the Codex was released. But this edition, it seems like, a lot of the nerfs are more localized. They're not a knee-jerk
yeah,
reaction to anything. There have been a few that I was very confused on that maybe were overboard. Like I think the Night Spinner nerf was overboard. I think if you change its rule, a lot of the problems are just instantly fixed. You don't need to because its damage is very low. It's no Manticore. you know,
yeah.
but
And
yeah,
I can't even blame GW for it. Like, I used to complain that, like, their nerfs and buffs were clearly driven by their sales cycles and what was
mhm,
in inventory. But I think it really comes down more to terrain. Like, ninth
yeah,
was the wild west of terrain. You go to some places that had like bare tables and some places that were just super dense. And now that we've kind of got the standardized GW layouts,
yep,
I think things come down very much to movement and out of sequence movement. Um, and so, like, to the point where like a 10% points change here or there, or a minor tweak to a rule, doesn't result in a 10% like change to how they perform. Like, it can swing much heavier. um I think that Eldar, yeah, they're very hard to tune because of how much they can do with movement and how much of 10th edition is based on movement.
absolutely. So I think they're going to continue to be strong. Um, but
Sure hope so.
yeah, yeah, we hope
i'm,
so as
I'm
Eldar
paint committed,
players.
so I'm paint committed, so I'm playing them either way.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Like I've played Eldar even when they were just absolute garbage. Like I was saying before, like in fifth edition, I mean, we were running at the time with a fourth edition codex. So we were all the way through. We went. It was funny. We went a whole edition with a fourth edition book, and half the rules became obsolete or very
yeah.
weird when fifth edition came out and just revamped a bunch of stuff. And
I mean, we're
then
still rocking 5th edition models, so.
oh yeah, exactly. We're still rocking. I mean, shoot, we're rocking like third edition
A
stuff.
Viper, man, isn't that the oldest model still in the game?
I think it might be. and warp spiders too.
I think
Like,
it's like 35th anniversary or something this year.
yeah, it's like so old. I mean, it still looks all right. I mean, that's the funny thing about it. I mean, is it a nice model to look at? Absolutely, its design is nice, but then when you look at all the mold lines and stuff on it, you're like, yeah, this
They're
thing's
gonna have
old.
to
The
they're gonna have
graininess
to
of
give
the
us new ones
plastic.
soon.
Yeah,
They're
they.
they're worried about printing and knockoffs. Like Eldar models are about to go public domain here.
Oh,
Then,
absolutely, man. Like, shoot. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna get a new wave of models with the new codex, probably, if I had to guess.
I, what are you hoping for?
I'm hoping for, at the very least, the aspect warriors.
Yes,
Warp spiders, swooping
especially with how
hawks.
little love they got in the index.
Oh, absolutely, man. They do need new models with those. Because if you think about it, like for me, like I'm an enjoyer of some of the old models. Like I really like swooping hawks. A lot of people don't like them, and they're really bad models as far as design. Their wings are always falling off. You know,
I'm
um,
using Scourges. I don't like the Hawk models.
yeah, a lot of people don't like them for some reason. I kind maybe it's just nostalgia for me
I will say
because
they're a nightmare to place. They just tip
yeah,
over.
exactly. That's the problem with them, right? They're unwieldy and they're not very friendly for somebody playing a game of 40K. You have to put weights
There
on.
were at least three times at Richmond where I just like dropped them down in a pile. Like turn 4 or 5 I was like, hey man, you good with me just leaving them there? It's gonna
Yeah,
take 2 minutes to set them up. So
exactly.
um
They definitely
yeah,
need
like they're
plastic models.
yeah. Or I mean, so it depends on if you're running them on like which base size, right? Because they're still
Right.
technically on a 25 millimeter, and I think
Yeah.
I think I might have put mine on like a 30 or something. Just um I should probably fix that, but it was just like such a like quality of life thing. You're like, I'm so sick of these models tipping over every time someone breathes on the table.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, technically putting them on a larger base is just doing yourself a disadvantage for
Yeah, well,
that
they changed it
particular
too,
unit.
right? Like all the aspects for a while, it was so they started 25s,
Hmm.
and technically you're still allowed to run the 25 because it came with them.
Right.
But didn't they change them? I don't know. There was something in ninth. They changed like a lot of them to 32, and it was like
Some
change
of
the way
them
you're rebasing
are
all your models.
28, yeah, 28
Yeah,
millimeters,
or
and
yeah, 28. Yep.
32 is I think the
Yeah, I think that's what
autark
it is. I
stuff.
think I have I'm on 28s instead of 22s or whatever they used to be. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, honestly, I mean, I kind of like the bigger base sizes for the newer kits because it allows them to kind of, you know, look better on the bases and not like have their feet overhanging and stuff. So that is cool.
yeah,
I really want to see swooping hawks, warp spiders. I want to see, you know, the autark skyrunner being reimagined in plastic. But I have this bad feeling that he's going to be legend
he wasn't in my
material.
list. I've got a conversion for that one, and I love it. I took a shroud runner
Uh-huh.
and like gave the farseer a driver because like he should be busy focusing on like manipulating the strands of fate and
That's
time
so
and stuff.
cool. That's really cool.
But
I like that.
yeah, I like to make them stand out a little bit. But yeah, you're right. Like those models need an upgrade. Um, and
Absolutely.
but it's kind of nice too because there's not a lot of opportunity for kit bashes conversions in Eldar, right? And
Right.
like I'm having some fun building some Harlequin troops right now out of some Sigmar models and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Yeah, that new kit. What were they called? The Lumineth or
no, I used
what
some
are
older
they?
ones. They were like the Daughter of Cain models or something,
Oh,
I
the
think.
Daughters of
Or no,
Cain.
they
Yeah.
were or no, you're right. Yeah, the bodies are Lumineth. I took some like heads from Daughters of Cain or something. But yeah, like all my Dire Avengers are all Lumineth models too. So
That's
are
awesome.
yeah, so a lot of my infantry are actually.
Nice.
My Guardians are what they are, but yeah, I like the Lumineth models, and they definitely have the Eldar vibe, and they give you like the Eldar proportions, right? Like the
Yeah,
tall, skinny. Yeah, it'd be cool to see more of that. It'd be cool to see like I've seen different people do like true scale conversions of Space Marines, and they look so awesome. It'd be nice to get like the true like faction to faction proportions, but
for sure.
that's what like art and books and imagination are for. So
Yeah. I love creative work with anything. Um, when I was playing in college, I remember I converted because back then, no Windriders. You basically had the old Eldar. They were called just Eldar jet bikes or Guardian jet bikes. Um, so those were really old models, and I converted the Reavers, the Dark Eldar Reavers, into Guardians and or Guardian jet
nice.
bikes. And I've
Yeah,
always loved kit bashing with Eldar stuff. It's really fun.
I agree, especially with the Dark Eldar stuff and the remember like the old Windriders? Well, you were playing back then, so yeah, you do. The
Yeah,
ones that had like the little hook bill kind of. I took
absolutely.
those and I used them for warlocks, and they ended up looking really cool with the warlock on them.
Nice.
My Wayleaper is like an autarch head on Jane Zar, with some wings.
That
So I
is
used like the
cool.
Jane Zar body to have him kind of like jumping and flying and stuff. And then
Oh,
I
that's
couldn't.
awesome.
There wasn't much to do with the avatar, so I gave him. I like chopped him up a little bit and reposed him a little bit so that he could be holding a like a Sludmash demon head out in front of
Oh,
him that's like
yeah, I was
screaming
gonna
blood.
mention that. It looks really cool, dude. Like, it's funny. My Avatar of Cain. I have the original Avatar of Cain, and it's the old metal one. But I recently got a new one on eBay. I found one for like it was $40 or something like that, and
Oh man,
it was
steel.
it was an absolute steal. And this guy had it, and it was painted, but I could just look at it and tell that he didn't paint it with like any kind of paint that couldn't be stripped. So I stripped the Avatar of
Nice.
Cain, and then I realized it was missing some bits. It was missing the chest piece, and it was missing
Hey, the
the
chest piece.
belt piece on the back. Yeah, the breastplate, I guess you
Yeah,
could call
I
it.
took it off mine so that like my Avatar and Magnus could have matching nipples from across the board.
Nice,
Um,
nice. And you know what? I was gonna say I actually liked the fact that he was missing it because what I did is
I
I
like
put a
it, man.
little
Like,
chain in between his two shoulders, so there's a
oh,
chain
okay, yeah.
running
Oh, that's
from
cool,
one to
man.
the
Yeah, I
other.
can see that.
Yeah,
I like that. Hang like a couple of soul gems from it or something.
yeah.
Um,
It
yeah,
it
that's actually really cool.
yeah, it looks kind of cool. I like how he turned out, and I got him for $50. So you know,
I have a bad habit of stripping and repainting my models. So I have two avatars right now. One of them's like the magenta that you saw. One of them's
mhm,
like I tried to go like traditional scheme with him. He was painted like neon green and it looked awesome, but it didn't go
nice,
with anything I had. So,
right?
um, I got it originally. I had like this display board idea I wanted to do where, like the lore behind like the ritual of the was the ritual of the Young King, like
Hmm.
how they summon and reactivate the avatar construct and stuff or whatever, and like the autarch goes in, doesn't come out, the avatar comes out.
Right.
I was mentioning I have like a little chamber showing that, like stripped down,
That's cool.
armorless, autarch carrying, the sword to the avatar kind of deal.
That is so
Um,
cool, dude. I've always
yeah,
thought,
there's already enough going on with this
oh,
display though.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to realize that, we're human beings and we can't do everything at once, but that is a really cool idea and you should do it eventually, I think, because that would be awesome. I've
Yeah,
never seen something like that yet. And I remember reading that in the third edition codex when I was a kid. And man, that book was like magic to me, dude. Like it was like a pamphlet. It was so small, but they had so many stories in it that were so cool. And it really got me into the Eldar and like just
yeah, and
this
it's tough to
hobby
find
is
Eldar
just
lore, man. It's
yeah,
it's hard. I'm
yeah.
in the middle of like an audiobook on one that I was listening to at work today that I realized I'd never seen it. Have you read Throne World?
No, I haven't.
Oh man. I mean, it's probably been out for like 10 years, but so, like I won't spoil it too much. But it starts out with like Eldrad Althrin, who's usually kind of an ass to the humans.
Of course.
Um, they're on like this desperate mission to deliver like a message to the Emperor, right? So like
Hmm.
he sends like a Harlequin Shadow Seer to infiltrate the palace, and then, like she ends up in the Golden Throne, and like her whole purpose is like to show the custodies that their security isn't good enough,
Yeah.
and like they need to protect the Emperor because like Eldrad has his own kind of designs on what the Golden Throne can be used to, and like some threats that it's talking about how like humanity's fate is intertwined with the Eldars, and either both of them survive or neither of them do. So there's like the Eldar helping the humans out for once, but they do it in a very Eldar way where it's like, let me come in and show you that you suck so that you fix yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Because we are, of course, the superior species of the galaxy. Of course, we need to, show our superiority.
Clearly, I mean, even if we were at the bottom of the meta, we still get to be the racist faction of 40k. In this satire of like all these terrible things, but yeah, like the haughty, arrogant Eldar stuff that like the Eldar routinely get smacked in the face for. Like I don't know, it's amusing. But yeah, I wish there were more
Yeah.
books, man. Like there's some other great books out there. The like have you done the Black Legion trilogy?
I haven't read that either. Honestly, my 40K reading, as far as the novels go, is pretty light. I read the kind of some of the Path books, the Eldar Path books, by Cav Thorpe,
Yeah,
and
those are good, man.
I also read. I've mostly read Gaunt's Ghosts. I have to be have to be
Okay.
real because I don't know why, but I was given the first book by one of the roommates I had in college, and he said, "Have you ever read this?" I said, "No." He says, "Read it immediately," because we all played 40K together in college. So I
Yeah.
read it. I had to buy it. I had to buy it again. Like, he gave me this like ratty old book that was like torn in places and stuff like that. And I was like, "Oh, I don't care. I'll just read it. I'll
They
treat
all
it
are,
as an
man.
old
Everything's out of
dusty tome. And it was
yeah.
really, it was amazing. I really, Dan Abnett's work is really good. And, it got me interested in reading more about the universe. Cyphus Cain I've read,
Oh yeah.
um, which was I thought was kind of funny. And then I've also read, gosh, I can't remember what the book is called, but it's about the Last Chancers. I think maybe it's just called Last Chancers. But have you ever heard of the Last Chancers?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Okay, so the Last Chancers is basically a penal legion unit for the Imperial Guard. In the Imperial Guard, it's a thing where, if you're a criminal, you get the option of, spending the rest of your, existence in prison or, being executed or, you know, hey, here's a last gun, and we're gonna throw you onto a death world or wherever, and you're gonna die in the service of the Emperor. And this unit is called the Last Chancers, and it's a unit that has managed to stay alive for the longest time because of its colonel, Schaefer. And it's absolutely insane Lieutenant Cage, who is like this like mass murdering kind of fanatic. But Schaefer and Cage do not get along. But Schaefer
Yeah.
knows that Cage is a great asset. And then Cage knows if he wants to stay alive, he better follow the orders of Schaefer because he's a good commander.
That's
So
awesome,
it's
man. The
this,
guard ones are there's so
yeah,
much personality to them, and like
there is.
some of the Space Marine books just don't do it for me anymore because like Space Marines have no personality unless they're
Absolutely.
Space Wolves, and then they're hilarious.
Yeah.
But
Space
like
Vikings.
there's like two main trilogies right now that I think are like relevant to where the lore is going and developing. And they're also just really really well written. You've got the Black Legion trilogy. The first two books of that are out. I think that's Aaron Dembski Bowden. And just like a long time ago, I kind of just committed to like an Audible subscription. So now I just I listen to them while I work or while I go for a run or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, or drive my awful commute for a little while back when I was working in the capital. But they do they do two like amazing unthinkable things, right? They make Abaddon a relatable character that you empathize with, um,
Hmm.
instead of like every other book that's just painted him as a massive ass. And
Right.
then they give you a Thousand Sun, that you love, and the whole thing's told narrated from the perspective of this Thousand Sun who's become the herald of Abaddon, who has surrendered himself to the Imperium,
Hmm.
and is there, and as the story goes on, he's on some tangent, kind of like, but he's basically announcing that the angels are coming back, like Abaddon's coming back, right? And then I forget who the author is right now, but it's amazing, the Beckwin ones, and it's another Inquisitor story, that goes to just like really really grand scale and sets up, like, I won't spoil anything for anyone, like read them. There's like Pariah and something else, but it's the Beckwin books, with Eisenhorn as like the second main character there.
Hmm.
Um, they take you on this crazy adventure to find out where Constantine Valdor is these days, and or suspected Constantine Valdor, and some like potentially momentous Imperium changing things that are happening in the peripheral. So
Nice.
both of those are just like amazing, man. If you pick up anything, pick up one of those. They're really good.
I
Um,
definitely will. I definitely will.
yeah.
Black Crusade. Black Crusade, right?
No, so it was Black Legion.
Black
So
Legion.
there's
That's what
I
it is.
forget the names
Okay.
of the books, but there's three plans and two of them are out, and then same deal with the like Beckwin Pariah books. There's two out and there's one more coming. And there have been like videos done to death on it, but End in the Death was okay too. But it like prepare yourself for three books and like 20 something hours of listening. They could have done it in like two and half the time.
Right.
But yeah, like you get to see something narrated from the Emperor's perspective. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was
Um,
interesting. I watched some lore videos covering that and so
yeah,
forth on YouTube, and that was interesting. Even though I'm
yeah.
not a big Imperium enjoyer in general, I did find that kind of cool as well. So,
Yeah, but it's like a main thread of the whole story, like the whole, like it affects the Eldar, it affects everyone. So,
oh, for sure.
um,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
and
sure.
that's my biggest fear with 40K, man. Like
Hmm.
to keep the business alive. Will we ever really get any kind of satisfying ending to the story?
Yeah, I mean that's the truth of it, isn't it? It's probably not. I think just like anything else, I mean, you're probably not going to see an end to it because they're wanting to, continue to develop stories and
Yeah.
revenue for the for the actual
And that's
game. And
bittersweet,
so,
right? Because like I would love to see a conclusion, but I also hope it never ends. So
yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Berserk, the manga. But I mean, do you know anything about that?
yeah, no, not familiar.
Okay, it's it's really cool. If you like reading manga, I would suggest that. And if you like dark, kind of grim dark settings, that's definitely one to read. Um, they have an anime adaptation as well, but in my opinion, the manga is probably better. But it's
Oh,
funny
wow.
because a lot of the setting of that manga reminds me of a lot of the stuff in 40K, very grim dark. But the author unfortunately passed away, and we're left in this kind of limbo, which I feel like is slowly kind of creeping towards an end, but like probably doesn't want to end because again, then it's like it's over, it's done.
Uh,
So
and that's a terrible, dangerous place to be too, especially if that author left some notes behind. Like
right,
it's like the Dune series, right? Like yeah, the books after Frank Herbert died they're pretty good, but like they're not the same. Like his son picked those up and finished it. It's like same with Game of Thrones. Like
right.
man, he better hurry up and write this damn book. So we can erase the ending that we got on TV and see what really happens.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's so true, man. Oh man, that's a whole nother can of worms, Game of Thrones. I mean, you could have
Yeah,
rage
that's another
compilation of
video.
that. Yeah, exactly. We'll have to get on again and talk about that while we're just shooting
Yeah,
the
man,
shit about
absolutely.
Eldar. All right, man. Well, thank you for being on. I've absolutely enjoyed talking to you, and like it's funny because we kind of just went on a tangent there for like I forgot we were even recording. So that's awesome. Um, well, let me have you on
Make sure
again
you put like
soon.
little face markers in the video so that they know when we start talking about
Yeah, for sure.
like
We should just start
Dune.
going randomly on about whatever. But yeah, man, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you, and I will once again leave the links to the awareness, the fight for breast cancer in the description, so that people can
Yeah, thank
support
you.
that. Absolutely, and
Oh man,
thank
it
you
was a
for
pleasure.
being on, man. It's really
Yeah, thanks
appreciated.
for listening to my TED talk about jet bikes. So,
Awesome, man.
um, yeah, man, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Peace out. And once again, I just want to thank all the patrons and supporters of the channel who have, really helped the channel grow and, continue to, enhance the community. I really appreciate it. If you do want to support the channel, I have free trials on Patreon activated. It doesn't cost anything to you, but we'd love to have you in the Discord to talk. And, of course, Aaron's in there as well, so you can have a conversation with him if you want to. And I will see everybody next time. Have a good one, and peace out.